Welcome to the Beehive, where we turn business and financial buzz into actionable insights. I am your host, William, and still joining me today is Scrub Risk Advisory Services Senior Manager, Matt.
All right, third in a row, we conclude our series on risk advisory services with a topic that's at the forefront of every business agenda, the delicate balance between AI, automation, and of course, security.
Yes, these technologies offer immense potential, but they also come with significant risks. We'll be exploring how organizations can navigate this complex terrain.
Joining us today is CJ Pacalso, a risk advisory expert with a deep understanding of the technological landscape and IT audit.
Yes, sir. We're eager to learn from CJ about how our organizations can leverage these technologies while mitigating associated risks.
All right.
Hello, CJ. Welcome to the Beehive. We're delighted to have you join us today.
Hi, William. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Can you maybe introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
Yeah, hi. So I'm CJ, and here at Scrubbed, I am an IT audit manager. And I've been in the industry for about 14 years now, primarily doing IT audit and compliance, really.
Really? For 14 years?
Yeah, that's
amazing. All right. Well, I think we should dive into that, right?
I think so. We have lots of topic to cover.
First question really is, what's hot in the world of emerging technology today?
So, thinking about it, there's never really a dull moment in information technology.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was starting out my career about 14 years ago, back then, the technology that was gaining ground was the Internet of Things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same time when smartphones really gained popularity. And it really didn't stop with smartphones. It's like people were thinking, what other devices could we connect to the Internet? And having all of these devices at the touch of our fingertips, how does that change the business landscape, right? So, like, let's say from a consumer perspective, now we have something like smart refrigerators, smart watches.
Yeah.
We have even smart light switches, right? So you can really see how with the start or with the boom of the Internet of Things, it really changed the landscape of the development. And you can see how that further feeds on into how technology has evolved with the next big thing in technology, which is cloud technology.
Cloud technology. Mm-hmm.
So moving to cloud technology, right? This is it's a way of broadly delivering a range of computer services over the internet. So these are things like your servers, your storage, your networking services, right? Because before, these are things that you all had to physically have in your office, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now people say that it's all up in the cloud.
Yeah.
Everything's on the internet. So that's infrastructure. We also can deliver software applications over the internet. You don't have to install it in your own servers or on premises, for example. And even entire platforms are available through cloud technology. And after cloud technology, really, we're looking at the next big thing when it comes to emerging technologies. So right now, the hot topic is AI, or specifically generative AI.
Yeah, everybody's using it.
You're right.
Yeah, I mean, with ChatGPT, right? Everybody wanted to see what it's all about. So the thing about AI is, and really with this is brought on by the internet, with the amount of data that's currently out there, the amount of data that's available, it's all accessible. It's been used to train AI to be able to provide human-like interactions, like answering queries, providing suggestions based on user data, and so on. So right now, it's getting a lot of attention because of its potential in business cases, right? And how can we use it to drive efficiency and so on.
Yeah, but what about the risks in using generative AI?
Definitely, there's risk involved, really, as with any technology. So as I mentioned, right, for AI, it's been trained using data.
Mm-hmm.
So the primary concern of companies would be, what data do you feed into AI? And it's up to each company to be responsible for and accountable for the data they feed into these AI models, right? So, like an easy thing to avoid would be, don't put any sensitive information or PII or PHI into your AI tools, because that will just increase your risks for if ever you do get hit with data breaches, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Matt, I remember the day where generative or ChatGPT was announced all throughout the internet. I was like, this is wild. This can be used for almost anything, to be honest. But do you remember the time where you started using it inside the company, like as a means of streamlining your process?
Right. And I think that's basically what CJ was talking about in terms of the highlighted usage of generative AI in terms of curbing at least our KPIs or key performance indicators for efficiency and as well as cost benefit analysis. Normally, like, for example, a script generation or like content generation that would normally take hours and hours to generate on a manual basis, AI already has the capability of big data, historical data that was basically put into it after years of exposure to various behavior and various content that was put out by content creators. Basically, it is able to generate that information in a split of a second, and that information drives really the efficiency of gaining at least a starting point into the creative process of every individual that might be in that space, right? Personally, I've used it with scripts.
Yeah.
I've used it with certain, I'm not gonna say narratives, but just, a starting point of how should I talk to someone, or how should I address my clients in a compassionate manner, and so on. So these are practical uses of generative AI, but I guess I wanted to just highlight really that there is a concern regarding the uncertainty of how companies and as well as how this particular technology utilizes personally identifiable information that might be very risky, that might be exposing us to different kinds of risk, and I think that would be explained accordingly as we go on through this particular podcast, and hopefully we can shed light into some of the usual risks that we are experiencing in Gen AI.
Yeah, I remember when I started first using it, I was using it as like as a communication tool, wherein I don't know if you remember the trend before where there are certain individuals on the internet that's completely AI before even this generative AI, like I don't know if you know SimSimi. Do you remember that? Do you know that, guys?
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
So you're talking to this little cute animal.
He was a good friend.
Yeah, exactly. And that in the very first stages of generative AI, especially ChatGPT, that's what we're using it for. Like, hey, how was your day? And talk to me about this, talk to me about that. But I think it didn't take too long before companies started using it for their business processes. Do you remember, CJ? Do you remember the time where you've put in processes or monitoring systems for these AI procedures wherein, this is becoming a big risk now, we got to put some measures into it?
In terms of using AI, maybe not even before moving on to specific processes. Like I'm primarily concerned in what do you feed into this AI? Okay, so like in terms of how to use it in the process, that's fine. Really, it's that type of information that you feed into it. So, and maybe in just a simple use case, right? So when ChatGPT first came out, people were excited to try it out, apply it in their workspace, right? But then you'd have to give people warning that, okay, if you're going to use this to like give you ideas, don't put in anything identifiable, not about yourself, not about what client you're working with. Anything that would give a hint on who this client or this person you're working might be. Yeah. Right? Because people on the internet are crazy. They can put two and two together with just the most minimal of information, right? So for personal use cases like that, I always remind my team to be as generic as possible. Anyway, your use of AI supposedly should be just to help like kickstart an idea into your, an idea into whatever you're working on right now. It's not really supposed to be the end product that you're going to use.
Yeah, well, it is concerning, very concerning. But still, I mean, the development of AI is still quite like an exciting, super exciting advancement in technology, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. So, as I mentioned earlier, AI, it's catching a lot of attention. So all eyes are on it, right? And, because of the potential benefits that it could bring. But, realistically, like companies are looking at AI both with excitement and caution. Because with any new technology, it also introduces unknown risks, right? Maybe not even unknown risks, but it comes with risks, so to speak, right?
Right.
So when it comes to AI, one of the primary concerns is about data privacy, data security. So going back to a recent study, there was a survey done where it basically asked participants how many of them have encountered a data breach in the past 2 years. And this study was done in 2023. So from that study, about 60% said that they experienced a data breach in the past 2 years. So that's, that in and of itself is pretty alarming because that's more than half. More than half of companies are experiencing a data breach, right? But that it doesn't really stop there. There was another study where participants were asked, what was the cost of this data breach? Well, what is the dollar amount of the impact of this data breach, right? And from the participants, about 36% said that the cost of the data breach was about at least $1 million.
Wow.
At least $1 million. And that's up from 27% in the prior year.
What? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So, for both the number of data breaches and the cost, it's increasing year over year based on this survey.
Do you think that is directly proportionate to the advancement of technology that we have? Like maybe the rise, it became 20% more because of this new generative AI.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about AI. Like, a lot of people are looking at it in terms of from a business perspective, how can it be used, right? But it's not really only businesses that are interested in AI. It's also got the attention of your bad actors, right? So, AI can also be used as a tool to, by bad actors to exploit companies, to exploit employees, to further their agenda or whatever it is they're trying to get out from organizations. So, when it comes to cybersecurity, right, it's always a continuous battle between, those who are like the advocates for security and those bad actors who are trying to overcome that security put in place. So that in and of itself can give rise to the increase in data breaches. But with this new tool, it's like it's unexplored territory. Right? So organizations are trying to figure out.
Can't really say for sure.
Yeah, organizations trying to figure out how to make positive uses for this AI, but bad actors are thinking of ways to make the most of it to exploit organizations.
Right.
So I personally believe it definitely adds to that count of increase in cases for data breaches.
Right. It's always a play catch with a cat and mouse situation with perpetrators and as well as security advocates with cybersecurity for every new technology that is emerging in the marketplace, from IoT to cloud technology now to generative AI with big data coming into play. There is always going to be an uncharted territory that is being explored both by security advocates and as well as the perpetrators of cybersecurity crime. So yeah, deepfakes, political agendas such as misinformation is something that is being utilized by AI, and that is coterminous or coinciding with the developments of AI in terms of business developments like efficiency and as well as cost-benefit analysis, basically. So in a way, neutrally speaking or objectively speaking, we are seeing the impact of generative AI, the pros of using it and as well as the con of using it. So we would understand that there is a certain excitement in using it and as well as a certain concern in using it, right? But what we know right now is that everyone coming from the good guys and from the bad guys are really capitalizing on the first mover advantage to understand what would be the ultimate impact of Gen AI, not only in our technological landscape, but also in all of the business, political, and geographical landscape.
Yeah, so it's especially with the rise of technology and how fast it's going, it's really who moves first, right?
Right.
Well, so there's a lot of concerning areas here, and there's a lot of risks involved, especially in this new generative AI. But is there anything that organizations can do, like any preventive measures to manage these risks?
No, absolutely. So let's start with the tool itself,
Mhm.
artificial intelligence. And as mentioned earlier, it's built upon the data that's being used to train it, right? So from that alone, it's all about managing what data you feed into your AI model. So organizations just need to make sure that they only provide the AI tool with the least amount of data needed for it to be able to perform its purpose. And I also talked earlier about how they just need to avoid adding any sensitive information, PIIs, PHIs, because that increases the risk and cost should a data breach occur with regards to these AI tools. And if it's known, but externally that you have this sensitive information, PII, then that just makes these AI tools a bigger target for your bad actors.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just on the tool itself. At an organizational level, right? My suggestion would be if you're planning to use AI, or if you're already using AI, just make sure that AI risk is already part of your risk and compliance management process. And actually, even if you're not planning to use AI,
Yeah.
you should still add it into your risk management process because as this technology grows, as it develops and gains more adoption from multiple players across the industry, right? More and more people are going to use it, so you're bound to eventually work with a third party that has
Yeah, you're gonna
AI.
come across it, right?
Yeah, that has
Yeah.
AI in their product offering. So in terms of managing your risk, it should already be part of the conversation. Even if you aren't actively trying to use
So it's
AI.
about being well prepared.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Because by doing your risk assessment, as an organization, you're making the necessary preparations to understand what are the actions that you can take to prepare yourselves for these risks, these data breaches, this cybersecurity or information security risks, right? And it also helps you plan out your resources to handle those risks. It's not only about coming up with a plan; it's also about executing, right?
Oh, that's
So
true.
when you already have that ironed out not really ironed out, but if you already consider that as part of your risk assessment, then you're setting yourself up for success to tackle AI, regardless of how you plan to use it.
Right. And it's important to reconcile that particular thought with the discussions that we're having about the basics of internal control a while ago, that risk assessment is really an important activity for us to future-proof our business. And future-proofing our business also includes basically our considerations over generative AI and cybersecurity issues in general, because these risks are expected to be discussed, identified, prioritized, and as well
Yeah.
as responded to by our top management or every organization's management. So yeah, that all checks out in terms of making sure that we are still consistent with our professional advice for organizations to really double down on their efforts to conduct their risk assessments accordingly.
Yeah, I've read about like organizations using. I'm not sure if you could fact check me here about using frameworks as a preventive measure, maybe, or as a safeguarding process.
Yeah, definitely. Apart from your risk assessment,
Yeah.
specifically geared to AI, you know, organizations probably just also want to beef up in terms of their cybersecurity, their information security, right? So where would they turn to if they wanted some guidelines? And that's where the frameworks that you mentioned come in. So in terms of frameworks that can help with security, you have your NIST cybersecurity framework, and you also have your ISO 27001.
Right.
So these both provide best practices in terms of how to manage your security, how to manage security in your environment.
Can you give me like a very concise answer to what these two are? Like, is it is it a cloud-based tool that
For these two frameworks.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a guideline. It's like
It's a
standard.
principle,
It's a
perhaps.
principle.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
you follow it. It's like a checklist
Uh-huh.
wherein you have certain processes that you have to consider, or like pillars that you have to consider, in order for you to say that you are operating in the intended manner on how are you going to address certain risks that are peculiar to the information technology industry.
Mm.
Yeah. So, like for example, a very simplified example is like if you wanted to learn how to cook a dish,
Right.
you look up a recipe. Yeah. So in this case, if you wanted to improve your cybersecurity, you look for these frameworks. You look at these frameworks. They're gonna tell you how. Right? Not maybe not directly, but at least
Yeah.
they're gonna give you guidelines.
Right.
Like this is what you need to have in your environment to help manage your cybersecurity, to help protect your data.
Right.
Gotcha.
And mostly, if other firms or certain organizations would not have the capability and as well as the familiarity to conduct these particular assessments, they usually turn to certain third-party service providers in order for them to consult on the application and implementation of these particular frameworks, recognizing that these frameworks might be highly technical in nature. They might be very principle-based as well. So since they are principle-based, certain familiarity is appreciated, and that particular familiarity is usually being sourced from third-party experts that are usually playing into the field for a long, long time. Let's say, for example, 14 years of experience. So yeah, it all ties out to at least the competence and expertise that we are bringing to the table in terms of how are we going to assess the compliance of an organization towards the following through of a particular control framework or cybersecurity framework.
Amazing.
CJ, I think we should also talk about the emerging risk in terms of generative AI and cybersecurity in general with regard to the involvement of audits and people in general. Care to share some insights regarding that?
Yeah. So before this, we were talking about how we can use or how organizations can use frameworks like to help guide how organizations can implement their cybersecurity programs and information security programs, right? And a tool that organizations can use to make sure that they're continuously compliant with those frameworks is basically their regular audit functions. Could be internal, could be external, right? So you're already undergoing through the audit. Might as well make the most of it, right? So you really need to make the most of the results of those audit, and be more proactive. You ask, okay, what do you think about these? How am I doing in terms of cybersecurity?
Right. Just dropping it there since
Yeah.
we are conducting an audit with you, right? So,
Yeah. Because some people think that okay, I did the audit, that's fine, but it's also there's a second step to it, like it's acting upon the audits, and you already know that you want to beef up your cybersecurity. So strike up a conversation with their auditors, like make them have a conversation with them about your cybersecurity, the results of their audit, and it could give you an idea on what else you need to to beef up your cybersecurity, your information security, for example.
I like that. I like that.
And so you also mentioned people, right?
Right.
So whenever we're talking about information security, cybersecurity, one of the constant risks will always be the people, right? Because that's generally the sources of the leaks, right? Of data breaches, right?
Human error, as
Yeah.
you've mentioned.
Human
in
error.
A lot of
Human carelessness.
human
even.
carelessness.
Right.
Yeah. And I mentioned some bad actors earlier. They usually, this is their primary targets, like people, right? Because they're the ones who can be exploited. Right?
They're the ones prone.
Socially engineered.
Yeah, socially engineered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people, they're like, let's say hackers, right? They would target basically computers, right? But people, it's also it's like a different dance to it, right? So if you're really good at social engineering manipulation, then the amount of information that you can get from people is really quite valuable.
Staggering, yeah.
Right? It could be your entry point into these organizations, right? So in terms of managing people, right? Most organizations already have some form of security awareness training, right? So in terms of managing the risks involved with AI, then you can just fine tune your security awareness training to help educate your users about AI.
Mhm.
You know, how can your employees responsibly use AI, and you know what are the how can they avoid being exploited using AI. You know, how do you identify, like, let's say something that could be a fake email, a
Yeah.
fake video, because like nowadays, like using AI, you can create like a fake conversation between two people, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
And you'd think that it's legitimate because it sounds like them, it looks like them, and it looks like they're interacting
it
with
feels
each other.
humane too.
Yeah, exactly. So
We'll never know if this is AI generated or not.
that's true. I could be just a set of scripts written on a computer.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, kidding aside, one fun fact
Uh-huh.
that we know out of cybersecurity trends, especially in security awareness, is that if companies are logging in more incidents being reported by their users,
Yeah.
that means they have effective security awareness training.
Ah.
Right? So that's a nice, I think, irony to it, or a paradox to it, that the more
Yeah.
that people are reporting security incidents, and the more that we are, detecting more and more incidents that are being reported by our people, the more that they are aware of the implications of cybersecurity crimes that might happen in their day-to-day operations. So that's a fun fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to apply it, like, let's say phishing emails,
Yeah.
right? Like the suggested course of action when you receive a phishing email isn't simply just to delete it. You also need to report it to your IT, because it's your IT who can do something about it.
Yeah.
Like, sure, you deleted it, and then great, I guess you've saved yourself from clicking a link,
Right.
let's say, right? But it's your IT who's gonna inform all other users that to avoid this email, like, don't, to remind people that, okay, we're currently receiving a large number of phishing emails, so
Yeah.
make sure here's some guidelines, right, that should have been explained in our security awareness training. So yeah, it's really up to your IT or your IT department to resolve these incidents.
Right.
Essentially, when dealing with the people problem, it's all about education, no?
Yeah.
When providing them with like the proper awareness and information on how to deal with these things.
Risk assessment,
Yeah.
there is always a consideration of what are the new regulations, what are the new trends that we have to consider, because as you said, it's always an evolving landscape and emerging technologies. While we're playing catch, technology is also playing catch. It's also playing new steps, or like treading new grounds. That's why we always have to keep ourselves abreast with the latest and greatest in terms of security updates, in terms of technological updates. So it's important that we have constant sessions with our technology team or technology committee in every organization to assess what are the impact, or what is the current development, what is the newest thing to consider in this particular emerging technology. So I guess that completes at least some of the risk or considerations that we have in dealing with generative AI or a new technology in general.
That's true. So we've anything more to add? Sorry, CJ.
Yes, to add to what Matt said, right? That's really true. Like, especially at looking at AI right now, it's fairly new, so we can expect that it's still going to make great strides in terms of its developments, and with that, it's also going to do additional capabilities, vulnerabilities, right? So organizations, they should be aware of what are these developments for AI, and it's the same for frameworks, for regulations, keeping up to date because as AI develops, there's a chance that regulations will already, will come up with some new regulation or policy that addresses AI. Frameworks like, the NIST cybersecurity framework or ISO's framework, there's a chance that they will add specific guidelines that could cater to AI. Because, if AI really has grown, right, if it's been adopted much more widely, then they'd definitely be interested in adding specifics to their frameworks, to regulations, to to address that.
That's true. So we've talked about generative AI. We've also mentioned other past technologies, like you've said, cloud technology and the Internet of Things, the Internet of Things,
IoT,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So aside from those, are there any other notable developments in the technology landscape in the recent decades?
Right. So yeah, we talked about the Internet of Things, cloud technology, and in terms of another technology that was fairly popular and it's still fairly popular right now, it's automation, or specifically robotic process automation, or RPA. Right. So it's a concept that caught organizations' attention because again it's all about driving efficiency and cost benefits, right? So with automation you're able to take these tedious tasks and make them much more efficient, with minimal human intervention, which we talked about earlier was a primary cause for errors, right?
Well, it's important to note that these are emerging technologies. RPAs, I think, exist already way back as a concept in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. However, it's just gaining traction right now, mainly because there are certain technologies that are being introduced and are being considered together with RPAs, like the Gen AI, cloud technology, Internet of Things. They all feed to what would be the process for us to automate manual components of the business. And that particular analysis widens the gap from what is the current state to what should be the future state, because we are envisioning a future state that is already evolving in our emerging technological landscape. Let's say my future state from 5 years ago is different from what I would envision as a future state of my business given the current capability of technology. So it widens the gap if ever we're failing to play catch or to catch up with the latest technology as with our current state. So it's really important for us to, push for this particular service of conducting or analyzing what would be our opportunity to automate our business, mainly because if we stay on a manual perspective, or like we stay with our processes being done manually, there is a widening gap between what is the current capability and what is the best standard, like gold standard process as compared to what we're currently doing.
Yeah, but I want to tackle on that terminology, RPA, robotics process automation, right? So for me, it gives the same idea that it's very related, or that it's similar to artificial intelligence in of itself. Are they not the same concept, maybe?
Not really, actually, because they kind of offer different solutions, right? So, like, at a high level, RPA is process driven, and AI is more of data driven, right? So if we talk about RPA, so it's process driven in that what it does is it takes over tasks that tend to be repeatable, tedious, that used to be done by a person, right? And it does it autonomously. So with that, it usually focuses on repeatable tasks. So essentially, you can create a specific set of business rules that it can follow, and it can continuously just repeat with minimal intervention. And looking at AI, it's data driven because it's trained using data, a combination of data analytics and machine learning. And with a combination of those two, it provides you with a human-like interaction with AI. So that's the difference. So like, to better explain it, like if we go back to, like, let's say your phone service, right? Back then, if you had a problem with your phone service, so you need to reach out to your customer support, right?
Yeah.
So what you do is you'd call customer support hotline, you'd be placed in a queue, and you'd wait until an available agent is available so that you can talk to them, essentially, right? So with RPA, an example of how RPA comes into customer support really is the introduction of self-service tickets. Sometimes you can go to a website, they can ask you to fill out a ticket. Yeah. So you can put in, you can select a you can select from a predetermined list of issues, right? And then you can give in specific details, and you send it out. It gets sent to your phone service provider, and usually you'd receive like some sort of automated email response, right? And maybe it could come with some basic instructions about your issue, or if it's something that's a bit more complex, then somebody from customer support will just contact you when they're available. All right. So the difference is, you rather than you waiting in line, right, by submitting that self-service ticket, you've already provided your customer support with the information. You're just waiting for someone to take a look at it and contact you if you need to do any additional actions, for example.
Just
solve the
remove
issue.
all of the hassle.
Yeah.
From before.
Right.
So it's much more faster than waiting in line for a call, for example. Now, how would AI handle customer support? So you've probably noticed that recently there's been a proliferation of chatbots, right? Virtual assistants. So if from the self-service portal powered by RPA, you'd select, you'd provide all your details on a ticket, right? And then you'd wait for a response.
Yeah.
With the chatbot, you can ask a direct question like, how do I get my latest billing statement, for example? And then it'll already reply to you, with some basic set of instructions on how to get your statement. And if it seems like it's not answering your question, right, you can further prod it to say that, I'd rather talk to a customer support agent. So with that, you're not waiting for a ticket to get serviced. You can already get immediate response from the chatbot, like you were talking to an actual agent.
Would you say that's it's an innovation from the previous innovation before the ticket system that you're saying, with the introduction of this AI?
Yeah, because the thing with tickets is you're kind of limited to what options are available on a ticket. So when you create a ticket, like you need to select what your issue is related to, billing, additional phone line, for example, and
a whole new set of hurdles, basically.
Yeah, so you need to select, from those, and if it's not there, if your issue isn't answerable by the whatever's available on the ticket, right? You're still gonna wait for customer support to look into it, and they'll give you the instructions. But with a chatbot, if it's been properly trained, like you can ask a question directly, and it'll also give you a direct answer. So you already get your first response immediately.
So it's adding another piece of technology on top of the innovation before. Is that right? Is that analogy? Does that seem right?
Yeah, in a way, definitely. I foresee that AI and RPA will work hand in hand in some way. So, but in those two specific examples, maybe they're kind of separate. They're separate solutions at that point. But in the future, I'm sure we'll see some modifications of the current solutions available.
And there is an emerging, let's say, consideration over how are we going to reconcile what RPA, what AI presents as an advantage as compared to, the general achievement of the objectives of a particular business based on their values or value proposition in general. Like, for example, if a business would have its core value as having that particular touch or like having an interaction or direct interaction with its customers to increase its particular experience, they would normally be, let's say, conservative in terms of adopting AI technology, mainly because they wanted to present to these people that they are a business that focuses on human experience rather than focusing on efficiency. So that particular topic is not really an emerging topic per se, because it's been going around for ages. Like, how do we make sure that we are still humans in the advent of technology and so on? But it's definitely a concern that is always being balanced by the technology leaders of today that they wanted to still recognize that in achieving certain value proposition of organizations, they have to play smartly and intelligently with the usage of AI and making sure that the nuances that it presents is something that is considered.
So earlier you shared with us some of the risks with using generative AI, right? That's probably true anytime organizations adopt new technologies, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So in your experience, right, with the 14 years, lots of years,
Awesome.
what are some general pieces of advice that you have for organizations that want to adopt to these new technology? I mean, in terms of managing the risks that are involved with it.
Yeah, so whenever an organization would want to adopt new technology, right? So I'm sure that they've already gone over in terms of, what potential benefits this technology would bring. Like, what are all the plus sides, the benefits in terms of efficiency, of cost effectiveness, and so on. So if I were to give a piece of advice in terms of how to implement technology, I think my first advice would be to start with your risk assessment. Make sure that you do the proper risk assessment for any new technology you want to implement, because this is where you're going to ask questions like, when I implement this new technology, do I have the right people trained on how to use them? Like, do people know how they're going to make use of this new technology? And in terms of if something goes wrong once it's been implemented, do I have the right support, whether that's internal or external support, to be able to get these problems fixed, right? If I'm thinking of getting a third party involved, right? If I want third party's help to implement this new technology in my environment, for example, like what process do I have to go to in choosing the right vendor, and choosing the right vendor, and choosing the right tool, for example, from these vendors. So aside from choosing the right vendor, I think one more thing that needs to be considered is what are the regulations that I need to be aware of before using this technology?
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about earlier about AI. So, how does that affect data privacy, right? That's a hot topic in terms of regulation. And, and moving forward, like, do I have the right people and processes in place to safeguard, my information, my data privacy, my cybersecurity information, everything that you need to make sure that, you with the implementation of this technology, that you're essentially protected as an organization. So with all those things considered, like you by doing the risk assessment, you're essentially preparing yourself to make sure that the implementation goes as smoothly as possible.
Yeah.
And you want to do this as early as possible, because by taking all of these considerations early on, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache further down the line, right? And you might be thinking that who should I be talking to about this, right? Or who's asking these questions? Who's thinking about them? And is somebody in my organization thinking about these, right? So my suggestion is to talk it over with your risk and compliance team, maybe your internal audit, But if those functions are limited within your organization, then you can always consult with an external advisor, a consultant, to help manage these, to help you navigate these questions.
Yeah. Right. How, in your experience, Matt, in risk advisory or in risk management or in risk assessment, are these systems or these areas that CJ has talked about, are these things always considered as a guideline, maybe, or sometimes are there other areas that you're kind of thinking about just because of the specific situation that you are in?
Well, in any circumstance that would involve technological dilemma, a cybersecurity dilemma at that as well, important thing to do is whether compliance to a particular framework is something that is followed through by a particular company. If they are uncertain whether they have been complying with an established framework of that, they could always ask their experts inside, or whether there are experts outside, their trusted advisors perhaps. Yes, this is me laying it on thick, camera B. All right. So apart from that, we also can tap the resources that are provided by your trusted advisors as well, in terms of having an assessment or a gap assessment at that for the latest processes that should be implemented as compared to what is currently being done as a design of your internal controls, considering cybersecurity and as well as information technology landscape in general. Apart from that, I believe any technology, any system, any emerging item that would be introduced to the company's operations, it's not always going to be a mutually exclusive decision between choosing efficiency through technology and automation and as well as managing risk. In fact, they go hand in hand. It's always going to be a concept of, if I introduce a new technology, it is a must that we have to consider how are we going to manage the risks that come with it.
Yeah.
How are we going to mitigate risks that would be attributable to the adoption of a new technology? And that particular concept might be complicated if we go down to the nitty-gritty details of it. So it's important that we have a brainstorming session with those who are well and are adept in terms of the concept that we are trying to understand, or whether we can also consult, again, our trusted advisors to have a conversation and at least gain insights from how are we going to stay ahead of the curve.
Maybe someone with 14 years of experience, right?
Maybe someone who's working in Scrub, perhaps.
Who could that be?
All right. I think that's it. Is there anything left that you guys wanna share?
No.
No, yeah.
I mean, that's sounded like a lot.
So our discussion today has been very, very enlightening, to be honest. It's clear that the intersection of AI, automation, and security is a very complex and ever-evolving landscape.
CJ right here has provided a landscape and an invaluable insight into the challenges and opportunities that our organizations face in terms of cybersecurity and information technology in general.
Yes, as we wrap up this series, we want to thank you for our listeners for joining us on this journey through the world of risk advisory.
We hope these 3 episodes have equipped you with the right knowledge and tools to navigate the complex risk landscape, and hopefully we are activating the better conversation surrounding risk management, governance, and controls.
Be sure to subscribe to the Beehive for more thought-provoking discussions on business and technology.
Until next time, this is Matt.
This is CJ.
And this is William. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.